Hi everybody, welcome to your very first Supper Club of 2012, 2013. Some of you have been meeting together for a few years, some of you are brand new groups. So this is a great chance, this first night I think is a great chance to get to know each other a little more, spend a little more time introducing yourselves, telling a bit about who you are, and we always say at this beginning when, give it some time, have an open mind about it. It can take some time to get to know the folks, and your first impression of the night. We've seen it change over time where people say, well, we got off to kind of a rocky start and now we're all, we love this and we wouldn't miss it. So go at it with an open mind, and we hope you have a really great time with it this season. So this year we're going to work on a book that some of you have probably seen, or probably a lot of you have seen around the church here, called Healing the Heart of Democracy by Parker Palmer. We both have a class that's being taught right now by Bowie Sewell on the book itself, and we've also been putting the 5 habits of the heart in the Feed Your Spirit in the bulletin. And that's what we're going to focus on during supper clubs here. So each month we'll do a new habit of the heart. This first one, well, actually, I want to back up. He talks about what he means by heart in that. So the habits of the heart, why does he choose that word? And I want to read you just a little bit. This is from the book. He says, in this book, the word heart reclaims its original meaning. Heart comes from the Latin cor, C-O-R, and points not merely to our emotions, but to the core, C-O-R-E, of the self. The heart is where we integrate what we know in our minds with what we know in our bones, the place where our knowledge can become more fully human. Core is also the Latin root from which we get the word courage. When all that we understand of self and the world comes together in the center place that's called the heart, we're more likely to find the courage to act humanely on what we know. So he gives us that kind of foundational piece for what this means to have habits of the heart. And so the first habit
is we're all in this together. We're all in this together. It sounds pretty simple, sounds true, sounds like something that it would not be difficult to believe. We share the planet together, we know that our global economy is connected, all of those things. But if you push a little bit, it doesn't sound quite as easy as it, maybe harder than it thinks. So as we began to talk about that, we thought about, what are some of the barriers to being able to live in such a way that we really reflect that truth, we're all in this together. What would a barrier be? And the first one one of the ones that we thought about had to do with, gosh, if there's a limited amount of resources in our world, a limited amount of time in our lives, and yet we're all in this together, people before me, people that will be alive after me, and there's limited resources. What if this means there isn't going to be enough for me if there is enough for everyone? Maybe there's too many people, and that really does begin to touch a place deep within each of us in terms of providing for ourselves and our family and leaving the planet a better place. So it sometimes has to do with scarcity. Sometimes it has to do a little bit with, well, I worked for what I have. What about that person? They may not have worked. Do they deserve to have as much as I do? And as I was thinking about that question, I remembered in the book of Leviticus, the Hebrew concept of the year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee was a way in which in the society of Israel, people were reminded that everything comes from God in the first instance, that nothing really belongs to any of us to possess. And the year of Jubilee was a way to let the land rest after it had been worked and produced fruit for so many years. It was a way to gain release for the people that were indebted because of debts they had and were working that off with someone. It was a resetting of all the gifts of God back to all the people. Pretty radical thing, pretty radical thing, and it had to do with trusting God and believing that every human being deserves their freedom. And but when you begin thinking about the implications of that, it doesn't sound quite so simple to say we're all in this together.
Another thing that we got talking about was that people who have very similar values, it's easier to say we're in this together. But even couples that we meet with before they're getting married, it's pretty quickly we realize that there are some different values. And so you might find one who really values security and the other one really values adventure. And so very quickly we find that it's harder to feel in it together, and that's just a couple who has a lot in common and who love each other. When we expand this nationally or globally, the way that we look at the world and say that this is more valuable than this, underlying that is the implication that if you value that, it's going to have an impact on me. So just like with the couple that's getting married, if she values adventure and wants to spend all their spare money on mountain bikes and rock climbing equipment, and he wants to buy a security system for the home, they've got a problem. And we see that same kind of thing playing out around security issues nationally, for example. So how we value things differently makes it very difficult to feel like I'm in this together with you. Interestingly enough, Jesus said or demonstrated to us a community that had a wide range of values. So you've got certainly people who came from the poor, the lepers, the prostitutes. He ate with drunkards. All of those negative words that are in the Bible that we associate, that Jesus held those people and brought them back into the community in a way that perhaps they're often marginalized. But what's really interesting about Jesus is that he also wants to be in conversation with Nicodemus, the Pharisee.
People with power.
Yes, someone in a high position of power in the Sanhedrin. Or you've got Zacchaeus, the tax collector, who's wealthy, despised by certain people, but of course loved by others because he's wealthy. You've got very different value systems at play, and Jesus is holding all this together.
Right. So as you think about we're all in this together and what's challenging about that, consider it on a personal level. Those were just two examples that came up for us as we began to talk about it. But what is it that comes up for you? What are the barriers to really engaging and being able to live in such a way that says we all are in this together? Is it problems of race or age or different interests? We all have a fear of things and people that are different than we are. So,
and if you don't get to know people who are outside of your little world, then it's very hard to feel together with them. And we realize ourselves, how many friends do we have that are of a different race or of a different age or a different socioeconomic place? And if you don't have friends at that level where you really know them, really hard to feel it together. So,
questions, right?
Yeah. So you might think a little bit about these two that we're bringing up. Do you agree with them? What do you think about them? Where do you see them playing out in terms of that fear of there's not enough, as well as how do I feel together with people who have different values? And then maybe add your own. What else do you see that's a barrier to feeling that we're all in this together?
Another question you could spend some time with is talk about with one another, what is it that keeps you from engaging with other people that are a little bit different than you, or in some way different? Have you even sort of intentionally tried to do that? And if you have, share stories with each other about how that was, or why it was difficult, or why it was really gratifying to do that.
And then in the Parker Palmer agenda for this series, he suggests a homework for people that we thought we'd pass on to you, which is you find someone who's in your world that you don't really know. So maybe someone you pass in the hall at work every day, or it could be anyone. Someone who cleans the house next door or something, and get to know them. At least introduce yourself.
Find a way to reach out. Find a way to connect with them.
Cross that barrier as a kind of an example of being in it together. We have to know each other, and then just report back to the group. See how'd it go.
Yeah. And then next month we'll move to the second habit of the heart that Parker talks about. So enjoy.
Thanks.